If you take Red Bull, for example, versus Perfect 10, if you took a Perfect 10 off the shelf, would the sales go to Red Bull? And the answer is probably not. Perfect 10 would be highly incremental in that scenario.
Jubel, another beer brand, it's like you take that off, what do you replace it with? Well, nothing.
You're balancing rate of sale, so high selling products with incremental selling products. So having a product on the shelf that Johnny round the corner absolutely loves and comes and buys one a week, when the average sales of everything else on the shelf are 30, much as you'd love to supply that product for Johnny, if you're Tesco, you're not going to do that. They would have captured lots of information about you, your age, income, hobbies, how many dogs you've got, what size feet you've got, everything you might want to be. The brands who only think about their brands lose. The brands that can think about the category win.
Guys, today is going to be a sick podcast. I'm joined with my very good friend and business partner, Kieran South, who heads up North Star, which you've probably heard me badgering on about lots on the podcast. But North Star are category management specialists. And what I wanted to do today is really dig into actually what is category management. I remember sitting in the office at Manilife, and I think loads of founders, you're probably listening to this, go through this. You know category management's important, but you don't know why it's important. You kind of know what it is, but you don't really know what it is. Everyone tells you to be incremental, but what does that incremental actually mean? What does the buyer want? How much data do you put into the decks? All these things you kind of think you need, you kind of know you need to do, but you don't actually know what the fuck it is. So I think, and as I was saying to you before we hit record, mate, like even there's the stuff I don't know about it. So thanks for doing this. I really just want to drill in and tell people how to use category management and what it is. So thanks, mate, for doing this.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to jumping in and getting stuck into it.
So I think the best way to start this is, how would you explain category management to like a 5-year-old? I know that's a bit of a hard question to jump in with, but as I say, loads of people know kind of what it is, but what the fuck is it at the same time? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think for those who've been in the industry a while, category management gets banded around and everyone assumes everyone understands what it is. But actually, when you stop and pause and think, what actually is it, and how do you simplify it, and why is it so important? It's good just to do just that. So I think the way I would describe it is it's how you would manage a group of products with a view of maximizing the sales and the profit from those products whilst meeting the needs of shoppers. So if I try and put that into practice, if you think of a retail buyer, they may have 200 different suppliers. They may have thousands of products. What they're trying to do is grow the collective. So they're less interested in brands. What they're trying to understand is, do I have the right range? Have I given the right products the right amount of distribution? Am I missing an EMPD? What pricing should I charge? What promotions should I overlay? If you're walking on my store, what displays should there be? If I'm on the website, what order do I lay everything out? And they're trying to do that with a view of growing the whole. So growing the sum of the parts, I guess. That's category management. The way perhaps to think of it is...
so that's from the buyer's perspective, right? So it's looking at the total category. Why is that important for challenger brands to know that?
Yeah, no, brilliant question. So typically, I'm going to generalize slightly, because again, this isn't ever really for sure. But as a brand coming through, you care about your brand. You identified a need. You care passionately about solving that need by designing the product and the brand, and that's everything to you. And you want to tell the world about it. Now, retailers in this example don't care about brands. They're interested in growing the category. So
because that's what they're measured on. That's their KPIs, right?
Exactly. I mean,
exactly.
It's a PLC. They've got a group of shoppers and they're trying to drive top line sales, bottom line margin, whilst keeping their shoppers happy. So that's what they're trying to do. But again, this isn't just about retailers. This is for brands. So it's a really good question. The brands who only think about their brands lose. The brands that can think about the category win, because the retailers then think about their brand. So if you sort of put that in practice a little bit, if you're only thinking about your brand and how you're going to grow your brand, and you and I go and see a retailer this afternoon, let's say we go to Sainsbury's this afternoon, and we tell them passionately how good our product is, what it's going to do, why it's amazing, why they should list it, get them to try it. What we're not doing is putting ourselves in their shoes and thinking through, okay, well, that all sounds good, but what happens if I put that on my shelves? digital or physical shelves, what happens? Does that solve a need for my shoppers that isn't currently being solved? Does it steal sales from another product? Because if it does, we'll get onto incremental, but it's not incremental. So it's going to add complexity in. And by the way, I'm having 20 of these meetings every week, and I'm being asked for hundreds of listings every week, and I can't make some. So what I've got to try and do is work out which ones do I need to go after, which ones do I need to back. So as a brand, if I put that hat on and think it all through for myself, I'm asking myself those questions, and I'm preempting a lot of that thinking. And as a result of that, I'll make better decisions.
It's fast. So the day we're recording this, and we'll try and get it live in a couple of weeks, is Amelia from Bold Bean has just gone into Tesco, and she just put a post out this morning saying, like, you know, we kind of got into, I think those in the early stage, you can sort of wangle a Whole Foods listing, or potentially even wangle a Waitrose listing. But even then you'd need data, but having the data, and Amelia was saying, it was the data that got us into Tesco, and that, you know, how we drive incrementality. And as I say, we'll get onto that. And I think what's really interesting is, as you say, the brands that don't think about the category and only think about their brand, the founders only think about their brand, not the category, lose. The ones who think about the category win. And I remember one of the most salient lessons out of anyone's taught me on this podcast was Lucy at Nice Wine, and she said the goal as a founder is you often think, what my brand, my story. The founders are great at the storytelling, but she said it's a great reframe which links to what category management is. How do we make our buyer famous? So what are their KPIs? What are they getting measured on? And you really boil it down to the human level. Is most people most buyers want to do well in their job to get status, to get a job promotion, to rise up the ranks. And it's like the category management is the thing that links the founder's story, product, passion to the buyer's wants and needs. And then that actually, ironically, well, not even ironically, that dance is what pushes your product out to the consumers. So it's the gorgeous little marriage, I think. And yeah, the way you've summed that up was super, super simple. Now, describe what incrementality is. Again, imagine I'm a 2-year-old who's just just had a dummy taken out of his mouth. Like, describe what actually incrementality is, because again, that's another nebulous thing gets bandied around, but not everyone knows what it is. Even myself, I always get confused with it.
Yeah, no, it's, again, another good question. It's another really important part of category management as you're starting to think about it. So if let me use a couple of examples. So
yeah,
it's going to sound like it's going to sound like I'm banging the big brands and supporting the small brands, which I guess maybe I am slightly. But if we were looking at a shelf now and we could see 2 different bottles of Heinz tomato ketchup on the shelf, slightly bigger bottle and a slightly smaller bottle, product's exactly the same. The only thing that's different about them is the size of the packaging they're in, and then the price. If we took one of those products away, would all of the shoppers that were previously buying the smaller bottle move into buying the slightly bigger bottle? The chances are probably yes. And therefore, the second product isn't incremental, because when you don't have that choice to whether to buy it or not, you move your purchasing into the first bottle. So whilst the sales of that second bottle might be great, the incrementality would be low, because without the choice of being able to buy it, you're happy to make a switch into a different product. That would be one example. Really low incrementality of that example. The second
and what
example,
would you is that what example is that? Like, is there a type which buyers think about with that example? Is that like, or is it just switching?
I guess the piece you're looking through all the time is you're looking for high rate of sale products. Having a product on the shelf that Johnny round the corner absolutely loves and comes and buys one a week, when the average sales of everything else on the shelf are 30, then much as you'd love to supply that product for Johnny, if you're Tesco, you're not going to do that. So you're balancing rate of sale, so high selling products, with incremental selling products. And what you're looking to understand is what's the perfect range. So say your range is only 10, you can have 10 products. You might not have the 10 best selling products if, as per the Heinz tomato ketchup example, one of those products can be replaced by something more incremental.
Okay, this is
So
great.
That's one example.
Yeah, go for the other ones, mate. Yeah.
Let me use another one, which is the extreme version of that. So, a recent example, fairly well documented, would be in energy drinks. So the category over the last couple of years has done incredibly well. If you take Red Bull, for example, that's pioneering, I guess, the growth in that category versus Perfect Ted, which would be a really good example. The Perfect Ted guys did a great job bringing matcha, I guess, to the masses. But if you look at it, if you took a Perfect Ted off the shelf, would the sales go to Red Bull? And the answer is probably not. Maybe one or two, if they were selling 10, maybe one of those two from the 10 would move across and buy Red Bull. But you would probably lose 8 out of those 10 purchases. And the reason for that is the needs of the Perfect Ted shopper aren't being met by the Red Bull product that's on shelf in its place. Why is that? It's a different shopper. Why is that? Because matcha offers a different type of energy to Red Bull, and there's a number of examples behind it. But the key piece would be Perfect Ted would be highly incremental in that scenario, and therefore the retailer would be loath to take to delist Perfect Ted and just have two facings of Red Bull, even if Red Bull was selling more, because they would lose a whole lot of sales out of it.
Mate, you've summed it up perfectly, and I think it's a question people can think about when they're, creating their pitch decks and stuff to retailers is, if we took this off the shelf, i.e. Perfect Ted, would people switch over? And that's why you suddenly see, it makes, even I think Beer Tap's another great example. Like Lucky Saint have done a marvelous job with that. So if you take Lucky Saint off, what are they going to switch over to? Obviously now there's lots more on draft alcohol-free beers, but 2017, 2018, there was fuck all. Jubel, another beer brand, it's like, you take that off, what do you replace it with? Well, nothing. And they're super incremental products. I swear. So that's almost like the driving new shoppers to the category, bringing new people in. And I think, if we took this off shelf, would people be able to switch over? Brilliant question for people to start thinking about. But then also, I swear there's other ways to drive incrementality in terms of like cash margin, volume. Like, what are the other ways which buyers think about and brands maybe or founders don't often think about?
Yeah, exactly. If you're a retailer, there are 4 ways to grow the category. So the first one is that you've got more shoppers coming into your stores. Now, as good as any buyer might be, it's difficult for a buyer to bring more shoppers into their stores. But the big things like Tesco, or what they've done with Clubcard, for example, has helped bring more shoppers into Tesco. So that will be one. There's more shoppers, you're likely to sell more. Then the next thing is that you're getting more of the shoppers in that store to buy into your category. So we'd call it penetration, a penetration of the category. For every 10 shoppers in that store, for every 100 shoppers in that store, how many of them buy into the category? That's the second way of growing the category.
So sorry, I'm going to ask some dumb questions. I don't actually quite understand what penetration is. Again, this is the thing. It's all these wanky words you hear, and I was like, yeah, mate, I know exactly what penetration is. But I'm just like sat there sitting like, just nodding my head. Yeah, there's great penetration here.
No, listen, this is bad.
Yeah. So I know you sort of said it, but like, so when you say a product's trying to go for penetration, what does that mean? Like, say you're a brand and they say, right, we're in Tesco now. We really need to. You often hear founders say, I really need to drive the penetration. Like, what the fuck do they actually? What do they mean? What do they actually mean? Like household penetration, like.
Yeah. So let's use 2 examples. Let's use one for a retailer and one for a brand side of view. So from the retailer, when I say,
of course, yeah,
the ways they would grow the category, penetration is basically the term means how many people in that store are buying the category. So if we use a practical example, we just talked about energy drinks. So if we stood outside a Co-op store now and we counted 100 people through the door, how many of those people would buy into the energy drink? Would buy an energy drink when they walked in the store? Say 10 people who walked into that store bought into that, and the penetration would be 10%. 10% of people in that store have bought into the category. So what retailers are trying to do is increase the penetration, the number of people who are buying into all the different categories in their store. They want the biggest share of wallet that's out there. That's what they're trying to do. And the way they do that is to get the right range in store for the right promotions. So the category management is basically how they do that. They're trying to juggle from a brand point of view. So the Meal and News and the Ball Bean guys, which is just incredible story, and they've just done an amazing job in there. But what they have the opportunity to do from a brand point of view is there are whatever it's 27 million shoppers in Tesco every week that now have the opportunity to buy into the Ball Bean brand. So when they're doing their shopping now, Ball Bean have a huge opportunity to increase penetration, the number of people who are buying into their brand, because their product is available where a whole set of shoppers that previously couldn't buy their brand can now buy their brand. So that's how they increase the number of the universe that's buying it.
That's super helpful. And then the other 3 ways to drive incrementality.
So more shoppers is 1, penetration, the percentage buying into you is 2. How often you buy. So industry word frequency that you'll hear about a lot. How often people are coming back to buy more. And then the last one is what we would call weight of purchase. And your example, weight of purchase, is how much they buy. So if you normally buy, you'll see yogurts a lot do promotions where it might be 5 for price or even 8 for price. What they're trying to do is stretch the amount that you buy every time you purchase. So premiumization is another example of that. So if you trade up to a slightly more premium beer, then your weight of purchase is increasing in terms of pounds. You might still buy 1 bottle, but if that bottle sells for a higher amount, you're stretching your weight of purchase.
Yeah, and this all makes total sense now, because I suppose 9 times out of 10, most challenger brands, to begin with at least, hit the premium box, hit the incremental in terms of the newness box, because they're always new avant-garde brands. But I suppose as you want to become a household brand, like your Bold Beans, like your Perfect Teds, and Brewdog did a gorgeous example of this. They managed to stay premium and incremental, but go household. And that's when you've got to start thinking about the frequency, the penetration, and that's where it gets super fascinating. And that's why I find it endlessly fascinating. It's all a game, and it's just it's how to kind of tweak those variables.
Let me use an example, Dan. So this morning we were looking at the beer category and the craft beer category. And there were 2 brands, both turning over about £10 million a year. So good brands that are in their scale-up phase. Face value, similar turnover, 10 million, similar growth, about 10%. So face value, these brands were performing in a similar way. But if you then put this, feels slightly geeky at times, the category management hat on, and thought, okay, well, what role does category management have in what happens next on these 2 brands? So brand number 1.
This is from a brand perspective.
From a brand perspective, purely from a brand perspective.
Yeah,
so how would these brands use category management in real terms?
Just to clarify this, so this is, you got 2 beer brands. They've got a category manager in play, both doing 10 million revenue, both growing 10%. I'm a category manager. I work for the brand again. So I think this is another thing: is it's people know that they at some point maybe need a category manager, but is it that important? It's like having a fucking window cleaner. Like, how important is it? But it probably is pretty fucking important having clean windows. You know what I mean? But So tell me about that.
Yeah, so let me use an example. And again, I think when we saw at the start around demystify category management, for me, it's a way of thinking. It's a fundamental way of thinking that's different as opposed to a job title. Now, there might be somebody that whose specialism is category management, but for a challenger brand to go about only thinking about my brand to one that started to think about how do I think about my brand in the context of the category, that's where it starts to change. So the example that we were talking about, brand number one, all of their growth was coming from penetration. Or put another way, all of their growth was coming from the fact they were attracting more shoppers into the brand. So all of their growth driven by new shoppers. They were appealing to new shoppers. New shoppers were coming to buy the brand that had never bought it before. And that's what caused them to add 10% to their sales.
Okay. Yeah. So brand 1 is penetration, all new shoppers.
All new shoppers.
And that penetration's becoming because they got more distribution.
Could be lots of reasons. So it could be that they've got
Okay.
more distribution. It could be that they've that they have run a promotion. It could be that they've done some advertising or media of some way, and that's driven increased awareness, and that awareness has seen more people buy into the brand than it was before. It could have been the sun was out at the weekend. Loads of reasons. The
It's
second,
just good to get those
brand,
down.
Yeah, so the second brand number 2, also 10 million turnover, also grown at 10%. All of their growth, they didn't have any new sales from new shoppers. They had exactly the same number of shoppers, but those shoppers were buying either more frequently or buying more each time they'd been in store. So no new shoppers, but the same number of shoppers were buying the brand more.
Which one's better from a brand and a brand perspective than a retail bet? Or does it even matter how you skin the cat?
I guess the first thing is, what do you do next? So if you're the second brand, if you're brand number 2, you've got an increasingly loyal, arguably, set of shoppers who are buying your brand more often. They're choosing your brand versus other brands more often. So as you're thinking through your marketing plan, really understanding who those shoppers are and trying to reach out to them and just drive that loyalty even more, massively important. The question you're then asking is, have we tapped out? Have we now reached the universe of people who love our brand? Or is there still huge headroom to get to more shoppers? But the marketing levers, so our marketing plans, then need to be prioritized based on that. So you've got some choices to make. So do we want to invest our marketing money to try and get existing shoppers to continue to buy more? Because that's where all that growth is coming from. Whilst the second priority is, are there other shoppers out there that we can persuade to come and try our brand for the first time? And if so, how are we going to communicate to them? Because it's a separate message. Not better or worse, but just different. If we're thinking of promotions, we're going to run a promotion. If we run a price down promotion, all we're going to do is get the same number of shoppers to pay slightly less. Well, actually, what we might want to run is a multi-buy promotion and reward those shoppers for buying more with a slightly discounted price.
What's the multi-buy promotion for listeners?
Two for a price or 3 for a price. You buy multiple items to trigger your discount.
Yeah.
And the behavior.
And if they were trying to bring new shoppers into the category, right? Into their product. This is the second brand. They could they maybe partner up and do like a link deal with a brand in a completely different category, like a big crisps brand? Because I'm just thinking of other ways for them to bring new shoppers in if they're already at their sort of max. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Lots of ways, and that yes, they could run a price down promotion, so they could try and reduce the price to try and incentivize people to move in. But I guess where category management comes in, and especially for the challenger brand community, is at the minute we could probably guess 3 or 4 ideas and we could try them and we could see if they could work, and then we could try some more and guess and see if they would work. But when you look at the way the bigger brands work, and there's a lot of stuff around the bigger brands that you wouldn't want to replicate, but in consumer goods, a lot of the arts of the way that the bigger brands use category management is absolutely perfect for challenger brands to start to use. And this is a really good example. So rather than guess, we could know. We could have a look and we could say, well, who are our shoppers? Are the shoppers in brand 1 the same as brand 2, or they're different? If you're brand 2 and you think there are more shoppers to go after, who would the shoppers be? How would we describe them? What demographic, what profile would they be? What age are they? Is it more male? Is it more female? What else do they buy? Once you start to know those things, you're guessing less on the tactics you use.
Let's go into specifics on that. So let's just say, like, don't have to give a name of. Let's just say it's like a brand like Jubel, for example. Jubel are absolutely flying. I think they're a great example because they're super incremental. You can just see that makes sense in terms of, if we took this off the shelf or off the tap, would people switch elsewhere? No, that's why it's incremental. Sick, get that. They're then obviously trying to get with the penetration, the frequency, the weight of purchase. That's the weight of purchase is easy to understand with the sort of the 4 packs. Frequency could be a hot day. Get all that. Say they get to a point, right? They're in Tesco. I don't know if they actually are or not, but let's just say they are, and they hit that £10 million brand. In terms of the consumer piece, this is where I think it gets interesting. So, like, how would they find out who their shopper is? Like, what? Do you know what I mean? Because they may have, like, from a brand perspective, like almost like an avatar of like a young 25 to 35. That's what everyone fucking picks. But like in Clapham, what does the actual shopper data tell them?
Yep. It tells them whether their primary shopper is a 25-year-old male living in Clapham. So
Right.
Typically what we've seen, one of the things that's changed over the last few years is the growth of D2C. And one of the things that challenger brands have done incredibly well on D2C is use it to really understand who their shopper is. They've got a really clear profile of who their shopper is, and then they market incredibly well using social media to that shopper. They're doing a fantastic job. That's brilliant. When you then bring it into grocery retail, it's highly likely that the Jubel shopper, in this example, made up, isn't a 25-year-old from Clapham, because if they would, they wouldn't be having the national success for that brand that they are. The shopper's going to be different. So if your brand's selling in Asda or Sainsbury's or Tesco, the shoppers that are in those stores are more diverse, and there's a lot more of them. So the first thing you need to do is understand who your shopper is. The way you understand that, there's different ways. The way that all of the big brands do it, there are 2 ways. One is you use something called panel data. So Kantar, number one by country mile in using panel data in the UK. Now, essentially what that
What's
is
panel data? When you say panel data?
Good question. I caught myself going into jargon mode there. So you're right. So
No, that's all good, mate.
What Kantar do fantastically well, and again, this is something every brand leader and every retailer works in this way. So when I explain it in a moment, this is how challenger brands can start to change the dynamics of the brand leaders dominating sales of brands in sales in the UK. So what panel data is there are 28 million households in the UK, 28.3 million households in the UK. And then what Kantar are trying to do is profile those households and understand the behavior. So why and who. Not just what's selling, but why and who. So what they have is 30,000 panelists. They've identified 30,000 households in the UK that, when scaled up, represent the demographics of 28.3 million. And then what they do is reward those 30,000 households to capture everything, scan everything that they've bought in that week. So you get everything you've bought in your weekly shop, and you scan it, and you're paid and rewarded to do so. So if one week you've gone shopping in Sainsbury's, the next week you've gone in Asda, you record that. It's really interesting because we can then see not only what have you bought, but where have you bought it. What they then know is they know a huge amount of information about those households. So, for example, if you were one of the panelists, they would have captured lots of information about you, your age, income, hobbies, how many dogs you've got, what size feet you've got, everything it might want to be that's useful to understand the profile of you. And if I was a panelist, they'd have the same. So that's how brands can start to know not only what's been sold, but who's buying it. And if then there are changes week on week, you can start to understand what the drivers of those changes are. So in the example about Jubel in beer, you can use that information to know not just what we've sold, but who's buying it and what else are they buying. And if we've had a good month and a bad month, we can see, is that because we've got more shoppers coming in, or is that because some of our shoppers have gone and bought a different brand in this last month? But you're not guessing. You now know the lights are on. You can see the answers to those questions rather than guess.
It takes the guesswork out of and I suppose that's where the stakes get really high. As I was saying, these brands like Giles Brooke, a few things on that is Giles Brooke was telling me about how Surreal had used their D2C data to actually get their foot through the door into Sainsbury's, saying, look, we know our shopper from our D2C data is, as we put, probably Clapham fucking goes to third space, all that shit. But then, and that's great for getting through the door. But as almost as you say, if you want to go to that next level where it's like, how does Surreal take on Cocoa Pops or maybe Dorset cereals? That data actually really gives you as you say, it's turning the lights on, which is a great expression. And I think it's knowing your data as you get bigger is vital. In terms of now, I'm very biased to the sort of the founder's story and the storytelling and the salesmanship. And I almost say fuck. Like, sorry to say this, but I'm sometimes a bit like fuck the data. Like, just go with like go with like the founder can sell the vision really really well. But I am wrong. But that was definitely my thinking probably until we started like chatting and stuff like that. And I think it's a gorgeous mix when you're trying to sell in. If it's too datary, if that's the right way of saying it, then it's going to look like every the PepsiCo and or Unilever, who's just a sort of part of my brashness, but like a cog in the wheel is just coming through the revolving doors in Bracknell or Welwyn Garden City. You want to have that bit of magic which keeps it like the va-va-voom, the je ne sais quoi of a brand selling. But then I think if you can marry that with data, it's almost like the founder's the attack and the data is the defense, if we're making this analogous to football. But what is the sweet spot? And like, say you were to write a deck for Sainsbury's tomorrow, and we were selling in Kieran's salt and vinegar crisps, for example, right? Or maybe we need to make it a bit more incremental. Say they were vegan prawn crackers, salt and vinegar crisps, for example. What are you? So, opening slide. In your opinion, do you put the data from the category problem for the top? Do you start with the story? Like, what would you personally put from all the brands that you've worked with and seen work? And as I say, I'm happy to be wrong here.
No, it's a really good question. It's a good practical as well. The first thing is the passion and the storytelling, absolutely critical, but it only gets you so far. It can get you from A to B, but it won't get you from B to C or B to D. So the trick is to equip yourself with the information you need to make the best decisions, to tell the right story, and push and divert all that passion in behind that. So there are, in your example, there's three things we need to know. Number one, what need are we solving? Number two, who are we solving it for? Number three, what are those people currently doing that we're going to persuade to do something different? We're going to change their behavior and they're going to come and buy our product. But what are they currently buying? So they're the pieces we need to know. The bit that data does is just helps us answer those questions. We can guess what we think they're doing, but again, when you're going into a meeting with Saley or whoever it might be, they will rightly, in my book, expect you to have done your homework. So if we walk in and we just say, this is us, this is our product, here's all the passion in the world, here's all the energy in the world, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what we're really asking the buyer then to do is to take a big risk and take a big flyer. If we think of them, they've got 200 suppliers, they can only change their range so often. We're asking them to do all the work in their head to work out, well, whose need am I fulfilling? Who would buy this product? How many would they buy? What would happen if I take a product off the shelf and put this one? We're asking them to do all of the work. The way, and the selling deck for me is do the work for them, do the thinking for them, and then massively increase your chance of getting a listing. So if we think we're really onto something, we've got a great product, and we can articulate to them, what need is this fulfilling that your current range isn't, and for who? Huge ticks.
So it starts with so the need first. Need, then what's the second one? Or the second thing?
So the first thing is what
need.
What is it? Why is this need something that isn't Johnny that's going to live around the corner that's going to buy one bag a week? We've got to show that there's a growing need that isn't being fulfilled. So that's the first thing.
Yep.
The next thing is who are we talking about? So when we're talking about shoppers, who do we mean? What if it's the 25-year-old from Clapham, then that's 25-year-old from Clapham. We could build amazing business in Clapham, but probably not go beyond it. So who's the shopper? How many of the shoppers are there? Because that shows that we're really clear who our target audience is. The next thing we've got to understand is where would this product sit? So let's imagine we've stood in a copper store now and we wanted the product to go on the shelf. What would come off? And the expectation from the retailer, and I think it's a completely fair one, is that we know what roughly these products are selling per store per week, and we know that it would make sense commercially to swap our product in and take their product off. If you then go back to that incremental example, if we're taking that product off, all of those sales come out the category, then that's not probably a great idea. But if there are products on that shelf currently that are duplicating sales, i.e. if you took one off, all of the sales would move to the other product, then that becomes a smart target brand or target product to go after. So the retailer's now
that's what they
hearing,
call the kill SKU, isn't it? Like
yeah,
the kill SKU.
Yeah. So the retailer's now hearing there's a huge opportunity out there that I'm currently not offering a great solution to. The shopper that would buy it's a shopper that's in my store. This product is not only going to sell well, but it's going to be incremental to my current range. It's going to make me more, not only sales, but actually the margin of this product looks good as well. And the brands, Dan and Kieran have come in and they've done my work for me and said, look, there's probably 3 products that we would target within the range that we think aren't working hard for you, or we think we can work harder. So the choice becomes which of the 3 as opposed to a yes or no. So what we've put forward is a really commercially savvy, passionately delivered story that shows the retailer how we're going to help them grow their category. And therefore, as a brand, we become important as a brand to that retailer.
Can you use category management to dictate which stores you go into? Because so Adam Ballon from Innocent said, most brands get sunk by going into doing bad deals with retailers. Yeah. And basically every big guest I've said is like one of the worst things that can happen to a brand is you actually go into the wrong distribution. So it's like, you'd rather be in the stores where some sort of semblance of your shopper from Clapham lives versus being the arsehole end of nowhere. Can you use category management to sort of dictate that? So say you're a brand who's been in Waitrose or maybe Sainsbury's, 300 Sainsbury's stores for a year. You get into that range of you at the end of your first year. Yeah. How would you use category management to say, right, look, whackers in these stores, and this is how we're going to drive the account forward versus actually if you put us in those stores, it could go a bit Pete Tong.
Yeah. Those episodes, they're completely right. So if you're purely chasing distribution points, regardless of where they are, regardless of who shops in those stores, then you have a win for the day, but then you're going to go 1 step forward, 2 steps back pretty quickly. So the idea of category management, just the mindset of thinking about this is to think about where else are our shoppers shopping. So that might be city centres versus out-of-home stores. And again, it's not necessarily the location. If we're thinking, in our example of our product, if this is a product that's eaten alongside a bottle of wine, probably a bad example given the type of product you described, but if this is something that's eaten, like shared during the week or at the weekend or whatever, what we don't want to be is listed near schools because that's the wrong audience. So what we need to understand is the kind of shopper that we're going after, the mission, if you want another buzzword, but what is it that those shoppers are doing when they're in those stores? And if we understand that, we can
define shopper mission for me, because again, that's just another, I thought it was all fucking Tom Cruise getting MI fucking 2 on it. Like, everyone says like, what's the shopper mission? What's the shopper mission?
Yeah. So let's think of a couple of examples. So let's think of a convenience store. In theory, convenience store is a convenience store. We group them together and we talk about them as there were 20,000 convenience stores out there, and we talk about them as if they're all the same. When we start to think about missions, what we're talking about is what's the reason people are in those stores? So a corner store on the end of a high street, the mission for that might be lottery tickets, drinks, a meal deal. That might be the primary reasons people are walking into those stores, and therefore the way those stores are laid out and merchandise and the sales and the missions are those type of products. So if you're selling if you think of the product we described, we wouldn't put that in a multi-pack, 24 packs to be bought for the kids at the weekend, because those occasions aren't taking place in those stores. If we're thinking about a product that's being bought at the weekend, it might be being shopped in a basket. So your link deal example earlier, being sold alongside a bottle of wine or being merchandised like that is much more appropriate. So you need to understand the missions that are taking place in the stores, not just the distribution points that you're chasing. So in practical terms, how does that work? The retailers obviously decide ultimately which distribution you should be up or down in. But the pieces of brand owner you need to understand is, who is your shopper? Where else are those shoppers? Where is your brand going to do well? Where isn't your brand going to do well? And being able to have that point of view and that dialogue is really important.
The next question, and we'll wrap this up in a sec, but mate, this is just so brilliant for me to understand. Like, it feels like founders are chasing tennis balls, as Parry says. There's like 1,000 different things going on. It almost feels like, as I say, category management gets put to the side. You're thinking, let's hire a fucking marketing director. Let's hire a, it just feels like there's a gazillion different options to move forward as a brand. Why do you think category management first part of this question, why is category management almost shoved under the rug? One. And two, why do you think it is probably the most salient bullet to use in your gun for growth, or your growth gun to kind of go forward?
Yeah. I think there's probably two historic reasons and there's a new reason. So why, as a founder now myself, there's 10 emails every day of shiny things that are going to save your life, and you've got to work out which one, if any of them, is the one to go after. And it's difficult. I think historically the reason has been brand leaders invest in category management as a challenger brand. It's too expensive. And even if I made the decision to buy into it, I would need somebody with a specialism to be able to make it worth its while. And so for those reasons, it's a decision for tomorrow, not for today. I think they have the historic reasons. But I'll come back to that. The other reason, the newer reason, is I think in the last few years, I read about 70% of founders coming in, starting challenger brands in the UK, don't have a consumer goods background, which has been amazing because they've then brought a whole load of new innovation, new thinking, diversity to the industry, and are launching products that take on some of the bigger brands that never would have been done before, launch products that you never would have thought to have launched before. So it's been incredible. But with that comes, you don't always know what you don't know. And category management is one of those myths not particularly well understood that feels like a nice to do. Why would I worry about everyone else's products? I'm just going to focus on my own. Every penny I'm going to invest. When you start to break it down and you look at, in the UK, there's 10,000 brands, consumer goods brands. 300 of them, 3%, 300 of them represent 87% of all branded sales. So these 300 brands or 300 companies for time have just done an amazing job using category management to have their products ranged in as many stores in the right distribution at the right price, and all of those things that mean 87% of all products sold comes from those products. And the reason why I think now is the time for challenger brands to really stop and understand category management a bit more is shopper needs are changing, behaviors are changing. There's an opportunity for challenger brands like there has never been, because of the quality of them, coupled with the fact what we're all wanting to buy is slightly different, that says, if you pause for a moment and think category first and brand second, you can change that 87% 3%. But you've got to do the work, think through, how do I better understand my shoppers, better understand my consumers, better influence retailers, take investors on the journey. The thread that joins those things together is category management and the ability to take a balanced view on what's the right thing to do for the category, not just my brand. Shoppers don't only buy brands. You will probably have a couple of products that no matter what, your brand loyalty, or you'll have a lot of brands that you would buy brand X or brand Y, depending on availability or price or discount, or whether they're available in the stores. So by taking that slightly broader view, you can start to answer some of the difficult questions. And that category management approach is what's going to see challenger brands really start to explode growth and change how big they are, how widely they're available, how many shoppers are buying into them. That's the super exciting part.
The point you said there about loads of new founders coming in and not being from a sort of consumer goods background is fascinating. And I think it was, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. It was almost this 2011 was kind of a change in the zeitgeist of people going into starting food and drink brands. You almost had like Jimmy's Iced Coffee, Pip and Nut, maybe Mojo was a bit later actually, but something changed. And even Mark Palmer said to me before, like, having a food and drink brand in 2002 when they're doing green and blacks, it wasn't like cool. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like a cool thing to do. Whereas now, like especially since I started Money Life in 2016, there's loads of people have started brands, but they're not from FMCG, or most of them aren't from FMCG backgrounds. Or big blue chip companies. They're kind of like either straight out of uni or thought, fuck it, finance bro, sacking this off, gonna go and do something, you know. So I suppose it's almost an educational thing of like, look, this thing, category management, this is what it does, but it actually threads the needle between your brand mission, how you get to your consumer, how you use retailers to actually grow the brand, and then actually I suppose the final bit is that how you bring investors on the journey. It's kind of the thing that it's the thread that links it all together, isn't it? Really. Anything else you want to say, mate, on it?
No, I think
before we wrap this up,
just use maybe a practical example. So if you think of the soft drinks industry over the time period you're talking about, it's completely changed. It's completely changed. We're living through a period of change on the soft drinks category. Fast forward 5 years, it will look completely different. A huge amount of that change is being driven by challenger brands, which is exciting. So, but if you're a retailer, for example, functional drinks is sort of, I don't know, the buzzword that gets thrown about a lot. That's a category that's come from nowhere and it's worth maybe 120 million now. In 3 years' time, it'll be 500 million. In 5 years' time, it would be worth $1 billion. But right now, retailers don't know how much space to give that part of the fixture. So they don't know who the shoppers of functional drinks are. They don't know where the headroom is going to come from. So are these buyers of functional drinks, do they used to drink Diet Coke and they stopped drinking Diet Coke and now they're starting to drink hip hop? Or is this an age thing? Is this about people drinking less alcohol and moving into different types of soft? What's the reason that the functional drinks is exploding? The opportunity from a category management point of view is to start to answer some of those questions. Who are the shoppers? How big is the opportunity? What does it take to unlock it? What flavors would you need? What brands would you need? Is it front of store or back of store? These are the sorts of questions that can be answered. And by answering them, you take away some of the risk. And the brands that take or lead the way from a category management point of view have an amazing ability to influence the future. Shots is another example. So Juice, Innocent, Tropicana. I've built up a juice category. Sugar has now got people concerned about that category. Commodity prices have gone through the roof, which has meant value is a challenge. But within the juice category, there's a pocket which is shots, the health shots. So the Mojus, the unrooted, turmeric, daily dose. They're offering a healthy, convenient way of putting good into your body at a premium price that people are prepared to pay. But they might sit on one shelf in a whole bay in a supermarket. Again, amazing opportunity just to take a category management approach and work out how big could this part of the fixture be? Who are the shoppers? What are the right pack sizes, flavors, price points? And take that lead, and that will set the agenda and work through with retailers how big an opportunity there is. And if you sort of look at the bit, I guess we get to sit on the data and look at it every day. The growth across all categories at the moment, almost all categories at the moment, is coming from new trends in new parts of the category, and therefore there isn't a playbook for here. If you think of things like Huel or Y Food, Bol, a huge trend that's really starting to explode. There's an opportunity using category management to help decide what happens next. And that's the same across so many parts. So for founders who come in who haven't worked in this part of the market before, taking this category management approach to think through not only what happened yesterday, but how is that going to inform what happens tomorrow, and making that controllable for you as opposed to sitting there and leaving that with the retailers to figure out, is what's going to make a huge difference.
Mate, I've loved that. Let's wrap that up there. But it's been so great just to sort of, for my own personal thing, you know, I talk to so many founders, but there's so much jargon and so much whiff around it. And I think people hide behind these acronyms and stuff. So it's been great to just work that out. And I think, I'm super grateful. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate the chance to do that. And note to self, lose the jargon.